What do you think the biggest misconception of your uncle is?
The biggest misconception? I would say that he wanted to be white. He was dealing with that from an early age.
April 24th, 2026, a darkened theater in Los Angeles. On screen, a young man's face begins to change, not all at once, but in slow, creeping patches of white that eat away at brown skin, one cell cluster at a time. For the first time in pop culture history, an audience is watching vitiligo happen in real time. Nobody laughs. That matters. Because 33 years earlier, 90 million people watched a man sit across from Oprah Winfrey and say the exact same thing, that his skin was destroying itself, that he had a disease, that it hurt him when people said he didn't want to be who he was. And by the next morning, the jokes resumed. The tabloid headlines kept running. The late-night monologues picked up right where they left off. A man told the truth about his own body on the largest stage in television history, and the world shrugged. It took a biopic starring his own nephew to make the world sit still long enough to watch what that truth actually looked like. But here's where this story takes a turn that nobody, not the filmmakers, not the audience, not even the Jackson family, seems to be talking about. Because while the world was busy laughing at Michael Jackson for 3 decades, medical science was quietly doing something extraordinary. It was building a cure, not a treatment, not a management plan. A drug that can reverse the exact disease that destroyed him. He died 13 years too early for it. This is the full story, the genetics, the autopsy, the fire, the family bloodline, and the brutal irony of a man who was right about everything and alive for none of the proof. February 10th, 1993. The most watched interview in American television history at that point. Michael Jackson, seated across from Oprah Winfrey, says it plainly. He says he has a skin disorder that destroys pigmentation. He names it vitiligo. He says it's something he cannot help. He says it hurts him when people make up stories that he doesn't want to be who he is. 90 million people heard him say that. 90 million people watched his face as the words came out. And the culture did something remarkable in its cruelty. It processed a live, specific, medical confession from the most famous human being on the planet and decided it was lying. That wasn't a failure of evidence. That was a choice. The bleaching narrative was easier. It required no medical knowledge, no empathy, no nuance. It fit the tabloid image of a man who'd changed his nose and lived with exotic animals. The story asked nothing of the audience, except a willingness to laugh. And for 33 years, from that Oprah interview in 1993 to the release of the biopic Michael in April 2026, that's exactly what most of the world did. The autopsy confirmed vitiligo in 2009. Peer-reviewed genetic research mapped the exact gene variants behind it. The medications found in his home were traced to FDA-regulated prescriptions, not cosmetic purchases, and still the bleaching myth persisted, because correcting a joke is harder than telling one. If the way science dismantles what the world refuses to hear is the kind of thing that keeps you watching, you're exactly where you need to be. Stone and Bone strips history down to its genetic core. Subscribe so you don't miss a single case.
I have a skin disorder that destroys the pigmentation of the skin. It's something that I cannot help, okay? But when people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me.
June 25th, 2009. Michael Jackson dies at age 50. The cause of death is acute propofol intoxication. But the autopsy performed by the Los Angeles County coroner, presented by pathologist Dr. Christopher Rogers, contains far more than a cause of death. It contains the medical record that should have ended the debate permanently. The report documents patches of light and dark pigmented areas across his body, face, chest, abdomen, arms. Under a microscope, the skin samples reveal reduced melanocytes, not absent, reduced. The cells that produce melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color, were being destroyed in patches, unevenly, progressively, exactly the way vitiligo works. Under a microscope, vitiligo has a specific signature. Melanocytes are present in some areas and missing in others. That's precisely what the slides showed. There is no ambiguity. There is no room for interpretation. Then there's what investigators found in his home: 19 tubes of hydroquinone, 18 tubes of benaquin. For decades, tabloids reported this as proof of bleaching. But benaquin, the brand name for monobenzone, is an FDA-approved prescription medication designed specifically for severe vitiligo. It works by permanently depigmenting the remaining dark patches so they match the areas already destroyed by the disease. You cannot walk into a store and buy it. It requires a prescription from a dermatologist. The treatment is initiated when more than 50% of the skin has already lost pigment. The goal isn't to lighten. The goal is to even out what the disease has already taken. Let that sit for a second. 3 decades of ridicule. The word bleaching repeated until it felt like a fact. The actual substance was a prescription medication for a confirmed autoimmune disease. Verified by Autopsy. The entire narrative was built on a label nobody bothered to read. Drop your thought in the comments right now. How many of you knew what benaquin actually was before this video? Now deeper, past the autopsy, into the DNA itself. Vitiligo is not a skin condition the way a sunburn is a skin condition. It's an autoimmune disorder. Your immune system, the same system designed to protect you from infection, mistakenly identifies your own melanocytes as threats and destroys them. Your body is attacking itself. The instructions for that attack are written in your genetic code. Researchers have identified over 30 gene variants linked to vitiligo risk. 2 of the most significant are NLRP1 and PTPN22. NLRP1, on chromosome 17, encodes a protein in the innate immune system. When it carries certain risk variants, it becomes overactive. It triggers inflammation where none is needed. That inflammation targets melanocytes. PTPN22, on chromosome 1, regulates T-cell signaling, the system that decides which cells are self and which are foreign. When it carries a risk variant, T-cells lose the ability to tell friend from foe. Your own pigment cells get flagged for destruction. Think about what that actually means for a human being living inside that body. Michael Jackson didn't catch this. He didn't choose it. It was baked into his genetic architecture from conception. Before he could walk, before the Jackson 5 ever existed, every patch of lost pigment wasn't a cosmetic decision. It was an execution order issued by his own DNA, carried out by his own immune cells. And these same gene variants don't just drive vitiligo. They show up across the genetic architecture of multiple autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes, thyroid disorders, and lupus. That last one matters enormously, because Michael Jackson didn't just have vitiligo. In 1983, Michael Jackson's dermatologist, Dr. Arnold Klein, diagnosed him with discoid lupus erythematosus, a form of lupus that attacks the skin, producing red, scaly, scarring patches on the scalp, cheeks, and ears. 3 years later, in 1986, Klein diagnosed vitiligo. 2 autoimmune diseases, same patient, 3 years apart. To a geneticist, that's not bad luck. That's autoimmune clustering, the same underlying genetic susceptibility producing vulnerability to an entire spectrum of conditions. The risk variants sit in the HLA region on chromosome 6 and the NLRP1 region on chromosome 17. If you carry enough of them, your immune system doesn't just attack one tissue, it opens multiple fronts. Michael Jackson's body was fighting itself on 2 fronts simultaneously: vitiligo destroying his pigment, lupus attacking his skin tissue, both driven by the same genetic predisposition, both misunderstood by the entire world as cosmetic choices. Now here's what most people have never connected, and I need you to think about this before I lay it out. January 27, 1984. The Shrine Auditorium, Los Angeles. Michael Jackson is filming a Pepsi commercial. During the 6th take, a pyrotechnic goes off too early. Sparks land on his hair. His scalp catches fire. He sustains 2nd and 3rd-degree burns. He already had lupus lesions, red, inflamed, scarring patches, on the same area of his scalp. The burn hit the exact tissue that was already immunologically compromised. The healing was slower. The scarring was worse. the scalp never fully recovered, and the resulting surgeries led to opioid painkillers, the beginning of a dependency that would shadow him for 25 years, all the way to the propofol that killed him. A genetic predisposition gave him vitiligo and lupus. A freak accident burned the exact part of his body where lupus was already active. The pain from that convergence led to opioid dependency. And throughout all of it, the world was focused on one question: why is his skin lighter? The answer was in his DNA before he was born. Everything else was consequence. Here's where genetics does something that tabloid speculation never could. For years, the question of whether Michael Jackson was the biological father of his children played out in gossip columns and comment sections. No confirmed DNA test has ever been made public. The question has lingered. But DNA doesn't need a tabloid. It leaves its own evidence. Michael Jackson told interviewers that vitiligo ran in his family, specifically from his father Joseph's side. According to multiple Jackson family sources, the condition traces back through Joseph's aunt and moved through the family line. Vitiligo has a documented hereditary component. 20 to 30% of people with vitiligo have at least one first-degree relative with it. If a parent has the condition, a child's risk is roughly 5 to 7 times higher than the general population, according to research from Indiana University and UMass Medical School. Prince Michael Jackson I. In 2009, LaToya Jackson publicly stated that Prince had inherited his father's skin condition. Michael's longtime makeup artist, Karen Faye, confirmed it. In 2023, Prince himself spoke publicly about it, how Michael would talk to him about managing the condition. Photographs from the early 2010s show areas of depigmentation on Prince's hands and arms that dermatologists noted are consistent with vitiligo. Vitiligo doesn't care about tabloid speculation. It follows genetic inheritance patterns. If Prince Jackson carries the condition, that means the same NLRP1 and PTPN22 variants that gave Michael his autoimmune architecture would need to be present in Prince's genome. A tabloid asks, do they look like him? Genetics asks, do they carry the same autoimmune risk architecture? The answer, quietly, without cameras, appears to be yes. What's your take? Does Prince having vitiligo settle the question? Or is it still too ambiguous? Let me know in the comments. This is the part of the story that nobody is talking about, and it might be the cruelest part of all. In 2022, 13 years after Michael Jackson's death, the FDA approved a drug called ruxolitinib, sold under the brand name Opzelura. It's a topical JAK inhibitor. It doesn't just manage vitiligo, it reverses it. It tells the immune system to stop attacking melanocytes, and in clinical trials, pigment comes back. Read that again. The exact disease that destroyed Michael Jackson's skin, that fueled 30 years of ridicule, that drove him to depigmentation therapy and prescription creams, and a lifetime of hiding behind makeup and long sleeves. That disease is now, as of right now, partly reversible. And it doesn't stop there. As of 2026, multiple next-generation drugs are in late-stage trials. Ritlecitinib, an oral JAK inhibitor from Pfizer, just completed Phase 3 results. Upadacitinib from AbbVie showed Phase 3 success. Povorcitinib received breakthrough therapy designation. These aren't treatments in some distant future. They are drugs being tested on real patients, and they are working. If Michael Jackson had been born 15 years later, the trajectory of his entire life might have been different. The patches wouldn't have spread unchecked. The lupus might have been managed alongside it with modern immunotherapy. The Benequin would never have been necessary. The makeup wouldn't have been a daily requirement. And the narrative, he bleached his skin, might never have existed at all. He didn't live long enough to see the science catch up to what his body was telling him. He told the truth in 1993. The autopsy confirmed it in 2009. The drugs arrived in 2022, and the world finally watched it happen on a movie screen in 2026. The timeline is the tragedy. April 24, 2026. The biopic Michael opens worldwide. Director Antoine Fuqua made a deliberate choice. He didn't smooth over the skin condition. He didn't avoid it. He animated the patches of depigmentation appearing and evolving on Jafar Jackson's face across the runtime of the film. Audiences watched vitiligo happen, not as a medical diagram, not as a footnote, as a lived experience on a human face. Jafar Jackson, Michael's nephew, Jermaine's son, 29 years old, said publicly what the family had said for decades. His uncle did not want to be white. His uncle had a disease. And now, for the first time, a camera showed the world what that disease actually looks like in motion. And June 25th, the anniversary of Michael Jackson's death, is now World Vitiligo Day, named in his honor, recognized by the vitiligo research community worldwide. The man who was mocked for his skin became the symbol for the disease that caused it. There's something worth sitting with in that. A man told 90 million people the truth about his own body. He had medical science behind him. He had a diagnosis, a prescription, a genetic code that confirmed every word he said, and the world chose the tabloid version anyway, not because the evidence was weak, but because the joke was easier. The DNA was always there. The autopsy report is public record. The genetics of vitiligo and autoimmune clustering have been published in peer-reviewed journals for over a decade. None of this was hidden. It was just ignored. If this is the kind of story that makes you rethink what you thought you knew, the kind where the science was right the whole time and nobody listened, then Stone and Bone is where you belong. We go where the records end and the genetics begin. Subscribe. There's a lot more to uncover.